Well, good morning, everyone. I'm joined here today by a group of our firefighters and police officers, and also by the Public Safety Project Committee that the mayor impaneled last fall. We're here today to announce a new effort to provide information to the public about a proposal that's going to appear on the ballot on the April 7th primary election for the city. The proposal would institute a 1/4 cent sales tax for 3 years in order to fund two important public safety projects. One of these is the replacement of the city's aging public safety radio system. The second is the construction of 4 new fire stations, one of which would be a joint police and fire facility. Lincoln's emergency radio system was originally acquired from General Electric in 1987. During its 27-year life, it's had 2 significant upgrades, one in the early 1990s and the second in 1996. There are over 2,300 radios that operate on this system, including all of the radios that are used by Lincoln police officers, Lincoln firefighters, also the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office, the University of Nebraska-Lincoln Police Department, the Capitol Security Division of the State Patrol, our hospital emergency departments, our Lincoln Public High Schools, the Airport Authority Police, and many other users. Last year, the Lincoln police officers and Lincoln firefighters alone pushed the button on a microphone to talk over 5 million times. The system is critical to public safety here in Lincoln. It's how our 911 dispatchers communicate with our first responders in the field. It's how those first responders communicate with one another. And although it's served us very, very well for the past 27 years, it's now become obsolete and it must be replaced. Here to tell you more about the 911 emergency communications radio system and why it needs to be replaced is our emergency communications coordinator, Julie Ryder-Dove. Julie?
Thank you. Just a few of the points regarding the radio system. As Public Safety Director said, that is our main means of communicating with all of the first responders in the field. Without it, we would not be able to send help to anyone within the city or the county. Our system was, as he said, put in 1987, and Harris, our vendor, stopped selling this system that we have in 2010. Many of the components of the system that we have today are no longer available. Parts and pieces, it wouldn't go off the air with one single failure, but the ability to maintain it and fix it is diminishing as the months and years go by. Also, we maintain our system ourselves. We have a crew of highly trained radio technicians that maintain the current system, and if there is no new training available on our current system, as again, the company has stopped manufacturing it. It's been replaced by something called P25, and P25 was an initiative that was started by APCO, the Association of Public Safety Communications Officials, over 20 years ago, with the whole intent of creating radio systems that were interoperable with each other and that were standards-based. Our system today, as all of the systems that would have been put in the 80s and 90s, are proprietarial, which means that you can only buy radios from the vendor that put in your backroom equipment, and everything that you do is directly linked to that vendor. What P25 does is it allows you to have backroom equipment that's interoperable with any radio, most radios that are manufactured today. It also puts into place interoperability with other agencies throughout the state and throughout the nation. So it's been a major initiative that's really grown, with the first of those systems going in probably about 10 years ago. They're on phase 2 now of APCO P25 systems. All of the vendor support for our current system will end in 2017, and our ability to maintain the system and to get parts for that system will continue to diminish as we go along.
Thank you, Julie. The second project that will be funded by this ballot proposal is the construction of 4 new fire stations, one of which will be a joint police and fire station. Lincoln hasn't added a new fire station since 1997 when we added station number 14 out in the Highlands. And since that time, our population has grown here in Lincoln by about 57,000 people, and the geographic area of the city has grown by 20.2 square miles. Just to give you some perspective, that's about the size of Manhattan, Kansas, both in population and land area. And as a result of this kind of growth that's occurred, more and more addresses in Lincoln are beyond the national standard for travel time from the nearest fire station in the event of a life-threatening medical emergency or a structure fire. Things like cardiac arrest, stroke, traumatic injury are very sensitive to time. We need to get a paramedic in front of a patient quickly in these kinds of life-threatening emergencies. And today, we have 10,000 addresses in Lincoln that are more than 4 minutes from the closest fire station. 4 minutes is the national standard for urban fire and rescue services and life-threatening emergencies. Back in 2011, Lincoln Fire and Rescue initiated a study of how we could use our existing resources more effectively by redeploying some of those assets to different areas to provide better coverage for a growing community. We updated this study last year in 2014, and Battalion Chief Eric Jones was one of the people that was involved in that original study and in the update. We called this the Station Optimization Plan, and Chief Jones will tell you a little bit more about how this study was done and what it recommended. Chief?
Good morning. My name is Eric Jones. I'm a battalion chief for Lincoln Fire and Rescue, and I'm responsible for information technology. As Director Cassidy stated, in 2011, I was tasked with evaluating the deployment of our resources across the city and to find ways to utilize those more effectively and efficiently. The very first step we did is we assembled a team of myself, our GIS analyst Julio Tolero, and Captain Scott Weeb, and we researched what other cities had done to try to more effectively deploy existing resources. We found a myriad, everything from circles drawn around fire stations on maps to more technical studies that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars by outside agencies. We utilized historical call data several years back from the time that we began the analysis. We used geographical information systems and GIS technologies. We used accreditation, internationally accepted accreditation standards and time standards that are adopted in the fire industry across the country. We were surprised at what we found. We found that many of our stations were in excellent locations already. However, with a few modifications, we could much more effectively address the growing needs of our community. So we were very excited when we presented the mayor with several different options and the city council with several different options, and we feel strongly and we think that it's proven that we can make a big difference with this plan.
Thank you, Eric. The Station Optimization Plan calls for 4 stations that would be in locations that would allow us to put 6,500 additional addresses within 4 minutes from the closest fire station. So it's a 65% improvement for a fairly modest investment when you consider the return that we would achieve as a result. One of those stations would be a joint police and fire station. It would be very similar to the LPD substations that are currently located at 27th and Holdred Street in north central Lincoln and in northeast Lincoln at 49th and Huntington. About 45 police personnel would deploy from that location. These personnel now deploy from headquarters downtown. And for anyone who's traveled into deep southeast Lincoln from downtown during the afternoon when we have a shift change, you're quite familiar with the time that takes. We know that by merging these 2 projects together that we could save fuel, we could save personnel time that's involved in traveling back and forth from downtown. In fact, that personnel time would amount right off the bat to almost the equivalent of 1 full-time officer. And most importantly, we know that we could improve our response time to emergent incidents, particularly those that happen near our shift change times. Now, all of these projects, the police substation in southeast Lincoln, the 4 fire stations, the update and upgrade to the radio system, these have all been in the city's capital improvement program for at least a decade. But last fall, Mayor Beitler brought together a 13-member citizens committee to study these proposals and to make recommendations on whether they should move forward and on a funding mechanism. Several members of that committee are here today. In fact, we have 7 members here. They are Tracy Samford, Doug Emery, Rick Carter, Mike Rogers, John Camp, Dick Campbell, and Kathy Beecham, and I really appreciate them being here. It's the middle of a workday for everyone, and it tells you something about how important this committee feels these projects are, that more than half were able to make it here at 10 o'clock on a weekday morning. I'd like to invite some of the committee members to make some remarks, and we'll begin with Dick Campbell. Dick?
Thank you, Chair. I'm Dick Campbell, one of the 12 members of the task force, and my fellow task members here that are joining us today. We'll try and give you some of the process that we used as we analyzed and went through it. We were very pleased to be asked to be a part of this. This is probably one of the best task forces I have ever sat on, because it was represented by a wide base of interests. We had 2 city council members, as are shown here. We had 1 county board member. We had a representative from LPS and the chamber in LIBA, as well as community citizens widely involved in neighborhood associations and business, as well as nonprofits. The committee started meeting under Director Cassidy's leadership, and we spent the entire first part of our work to become as educated as we possibly could be on what the issues were and what were the different options that had been analyzed to solve problems that had arisen. We learned in detail about each of these areas: the radio, the relay towers, the fire department and police departments. With each presentation, the task force asked many questions, and sometimes some very pointed questions, and really analyzed the department recommendations, and they were thoroughly challenged by the members of the task force. After finishing our education and getting the questions, we had either additional information sent to us or answered at the time. The task force voted unanimously that the requests were valid and needed to be, that we needed to proceed. That this is something you don't put a Band-Aid on. And if we want our officers and our fire personnel to be able to communicate with each other and provide a safer environment for all of us, this was something that was very high on the plate. We then moved into looking at financial solutions. What is the best way to go ahead and fund this? There were seven different ideas and proposals that were put on the table. And thanks to one of our task force members, who is far brighter than I am, she brought it in a spreadsheet with all of the what's good about this proposal, what does this proposal lack, what would it do, how fast could it be implemented, so on and so forth. And as we looked at that and started analyzing it, some of the options were bonding, leasing, lease purchase, or pay-as-you-go. After analyzing all 7, it became very clear that the pay-as-you-go was the cheapest way to implement the new radio systems and build the fire stations and develop a stronger police presence in southern Lincoln, as it has been done in northeast and north central. Thus, the advisory committee at the end again unanimously recommended to the mayor and the city council that we ask voters to support the addition of a 1/4 of 1 cent sales tax with approval by voters to fund the needed safety upgrades. Why was this recommendation brought forth? One, it allows us to start to save the money and pay for things as the funds are available. This is no different than each of us in our own homes and environment having a need, whether it be a new car or whatever else, and either dedicating money that we had been using for other resources to a fund, or getting a second job to save the funds for that something we wanted to purchase. Well, the bid documents are being developed, if this passes, and put out to bid, and the companies have time to develop their bids. And then we would receive bids back, and the winner determined, and then, of course, contract negotiations would begin, and finally, the implementation of the system upgrades. We're accumulating funds during that whole time. And this is not a process that's going to take 30 days. It's going to take some time to go through this process, and consequently will allow us to pay as we go. This also saves $11 to $12 million in interest costs over a bonding proposal. And being a fiscal conservative, that's important to me, and it became very important to the task force that let's look for the cheapest way we can implement these needs that we have as a community. Another reason that we favor this proposal was the 14% of the money that is accumulated through the quarter-cent sales tax will come from non-Lincoln citizens. And it is others helping us pay for the system that protects them while they are in our community, whether it be state basketball tournaments or just visiting. This is the cheapest way to upgrade our safety needs. On behalf of the task force, I urge all voters to study the issues and hopefully come to the same conclusions that the task force did. This is very much needed, and it is the most economical way to accomplish it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dick. I'd next like to invite to the podium City Councilman Doug Emery, who also served on the committee.
Thank you. As Dick said, this committee, I think, worked very hard and very diligently to try to find a way to meet the needs that are coming and to do it in the most economical way. And a year ago, when the legislature allowed municipalities to put in up to a half-cent sales tax, they made it up to a half-cent for 10 years. When you see this recommendation, the recommendation is not for a half-cent, it's for a quarter-cent. The recommendation is not for 10 years, it's for 3 years. It's simply the quickest way that we could get to the end game, which was to pay these projects off so that we'll have them and so they will benefit the citizens of Lincoln. One of the questions I get asked all the time is, well, why didn't you plan for this? If you saw last Sunday's paper, or maybe it was a little earlier than that, there are 11 other municipalities, I believe, in the state that are already using this sales tax to pay some of their infrastructure needs. Part of the reason for that is because you just can't save for infrastructure. Every place any candidate goes and any porch that you go on, the first thing people say is, please keep my taxes as low as we can. We can do that, but the problem with that is that you don't put any away for a rainy day. And if you think about it, we would have had to go back a number of years, and we would have had to overtax the citizens and then put them in a special account so we would know that we had this issue to deal with, and we would have the money. I'm not sure over the long haul that's the best way to do business. I'm not sure that the public believes that that's the best way to do business. I think this is the best way for us to meet the needs of the city, and I think it's hard for me to fathom that we have so many houses that we cannot get to in 4 minutes. I certainly would hate to think that because we pondered how we were going to pay for something, that we had the potential for somebody to not receive life-saving aid in a reasonable amount of time. So I think all we're asking is you take a look at it on its source. I would say to you that if you think the cost is too high, delaying it will not fix the cost. It's like everything else in life. The longer you wait, the more you're going to pay. And we are going to run out of time at some point to have a 911 system, and we certainly are long past the need for putting in new fire stations. So I hope you'll look at it and you'll support. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councilman Emery. There are several other members of the committee here, and I'd like to invite any committee members that wish to do so to make comments.
Good morning. I'm John Camp, a member of the City Council representing primarily southeast Lincoln and the southern tier, which is the large growth area. And of course, we were talking about a proposed joint police fire station that would be in a substation there in the southeast quadrant, which would be very helpful. You know, as we started this informational presentation today, Director Cassidy talked about really the three steps. There are kind of three elements throughout this process we took. And up front, we looked at what are the needs. Let's review that. Secondly, what are the alternatives to solve those needs? And three, how do we pay for that? And you've heard various officials here talk about those three elements in a lot more detail. I'm not going to go into that, and my fellow committee member, Dick Campbell, did a very good job of going through a number of items. I'd like to just summarize again and remind people of the need, the alternatives, and then how to fund it. And I know last fall, last September, the mayor and I both called for a committee to review this situation. And at that time, I was concerned that we really make sure we're defining all the needs, that we vet it through. The committee did that. I want to see that we looked at alternatives of how we can solve that need and how we can involve other segments of the community and our other jurisdictions in that. And finally, how we're going to pay for it. And I think most people here in town know that I probably share the title that Dick Campbell mentioned of being a very fiscally conservative. And you know, one of the last things I would like to do is raise taxes. We're at a situation that if we could turn the clock back, I wish we could have saved up some money to help pay for this. It does become challenging, but we haven't done that. We're where we're at. For the benefit of the citizens, this alternative that we arrived at, a 3-year quarter-cent sales tax, to me provides the citizens an opportunity to work with the city and the other jurisdictions and have a high level of credibility. We're talking about a quarter-cent, approximately $12 million a year in revenues. We're talking about a 3-year period. This will sunset. It will not continue. It's not like you get the tax in place and it would continue if it's passed. And I think that credibility is important. And third, as has been mentioned, we're going to broaden the tax base. As we looked at alternatives, we talked about, as was mentioned, 7 alternatives, a variety of bonding, sales tax, joint public agencies, and so forth. And looking at it, you know, in our radio system, our fire and police protection, it's not just the citizens of Lincoln, but we do have visitors. And we have outstate people. We have members in the county who work and utilize our city. We have tourists who come in, and you take a typical football weekend. I think years ago, Nebraska was claimed, or the football stadium was claimed to be the safest place in the nation to be on a football Saturday as far as our paramedic protection and all. So there's 90,000 fans there, and we know those aren't all from Lincoln. Bottom line is, this gives us a broad base to help pay for this system, the users. And I believe very firmly in a user-based system so that those who get the benefit primarily pay for it. So I think, again, I'd just like to summarize, we went through a 3-part analysis, looking at the needs, making sure we understood those completely or tweak those. We looked at the alternatives, and then we, as far as what we can do is in radio systems, that sort, and then we finally looked at the revenue raising part of it, how we're going to get the monies. And so out of the committee, our belief was that if we're going to have a solution that it can be funded on a 3-year basis by a quarter-cent sales tax, and I will tell you, I promise to you, that's the length of that. We're going to be honest with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Camp. Any other members of the committee that wish to make comments? Kathy?
Hi, I'm Kathy Beecham. I was very interested to serve on this committee. We had a very diverse group, as John and Dick have mentioned. Interestingly, a few weeks before I was asked to serve on this committee, my mom had a fall in her house. She moved to Lincoln a few years ago to retire. We're very lucky. And like many retirees, she has chosen to age in her home. We were very lucky. Our emergency responders got there before I did, and I only live a few blocks away. But later, and she was fine, hurt her hip, but was fine. But a few weeks later, when we started working on this committee, it was very interesting to me to start talking about time with Director Cassidy. And I asked him, why is this 4 minutes so important? And he told me, well, for 2 main reasons. A fire can double in size every 4 minutes, and brain death can occur every 4 minutes. And that really got me to thinking about my mom's fall. And we were lucky that it was a hip in many ways. But if it had been a stroke or cardiac arrest or a near drowning, something that had stopped oxygen to the brain, emergency responders being able to be there in 4 minutes could have made a tremendous difference between life and death. And as I learned that we have 10,000 homes in our community that are outside of that 4-minute mark, one of the things I think is most important about this proposal is that it dramatically addresses that problem. Our community is growing. We're very proud of that. There's a lot of people that work very hard to help us grow in a thoughtful way. And I think it's important that our families, our single people, our retirees like my mom, are as protected as we can get them in terms of emergency response time.
Thank you, Kathy. Last call, any other, Rick Carter?
Thanks, and I'm Rick Carter, and I'll keep these very quick because I know the men and women to my right have very important jobs to be doing. I just want to say thank you to my fellow committee members who I think came to this with very open minds. Nobody came with a preset agenda. I think we sat down, we very diligently reviewed the proposals as they were presented and identified the need that existed. And I think we reviewed, as you heard, a lot of different funding options for this. And so to them, I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to the administration and the staff for bringing this group together, because I think it was the right way to do this, was to bring a community group together, talk about what these issues were, decide, number one, does Lincoln need this? And then number two, how should Lincoln pay for this? And most of all, I would like to say thank you to the men and women to the right of me. I'm very proud of them and very thankful for the work that they do every day in our community. And I think for me, that's what it came down to. And I would be the first one to say that when I see flashing red lights in my rearview mirror, I get a little nervous. Thankfully, it doesn't happen all the time. But the one thing that I know in living in this community is that when I pick up the phone and I need those flashing red lights, whether it's for myself or for a loved one, that these people here respond and they are there to help. And I think that knowing that and knowing that good communication is essential to that, and knowing that minutes and seconds save lives. 3 years ago today, I spent 25 years in the Nebraska Army National Guard, and 3 years ago today, I was in a helicopter in Afghanistan. And in my time in the Guard, I served in medevac units and other types of units. And I know firsthand that minutes and seconds and good communication matter. They save lives. And I think that it is as important as public safety is to this community, it's essential that we equip these men and women with the ability to provide that public safety. And so again, thank you to them and thank you to our community members.
Thank you, Rick. Last call. I want to thank the committee for all the work that they did. It was really a pleasure for me to chair this committee. There were some members of the committee, like Councilman Emery, Councilman Camp, Dick Campbell, that I've known and worked with for years. There were other people that I got to know for the first time, like Kathy and Mike and Tracy and Rick and Liz, and it was just an absolute pleasure for me. In my long career, I've worked with a lot of committees. This is by far and away the best experience I've had, and I've been telling the mayor that he should keep all of you in mind for future needs, because you did such a great job. It was, as Dick pointed out, a very diverse group. And it was good to see such diversity come together with a unanimous recommendation. This proposal that is on the ballot for April 7th was unanimously voted upon by the City Council to put that before the voters. It was a unanimous recommendation of the committee. It's been endorsed by the Lincoln Chamber of Commerce, the Lincoln Independent Business Association, our Home Builders Association, and the Lincoln Board of Realtors. I've rarely seen anything in my years that has had such broad support, and I'm glad that the voters will have an opportunity to learn about the proposals and to give consideration to the ballot issue on April 7th. Today we've launched a website that has a great deal of information about the initiative, and I'm encouraging all of our citizens to become informed about this important proposition. The website is available at the city's website, lincoln.ne.gov, by using the keyword public safety. I really want to thank the staff of the Citizens Information Center. They did a great job in putting this together. One of the things that I enjoy the most about this website are a series of short videos by firefighters and police officers talking about these needs that would be funded by the ballot proposal. And I think we're going to show a short clip from one of those videos right now.
One of the challenges that we often face is apprehending a subject that is running from us on foot. And oftentimes what we'll do to apprehend somebody in that situation is we'll set a perimeter. And we do that by coordinating with each other over the radio system to set that perimeter. And oftentimes a perimeter will consist of 2 or 3 officers who then will take up positions. In a recent incident that I was involved in, I participated in apprehending a subject who had stolen a vehicle.
Oriented white male, gray hoodie, black brown coat, black backpack, white male, buzz cut.
My initial position was at 32nd and R Street. And my job at that point in time was to operate or contain the northern edge of the perimeter and the western edge of the perimeter. And so from a position at 32nd and R, I can easily see R Street to the east, and I can see down 32nd Street to the south. And so from my corner of the perimeter, or the box, I have a very good view.
He went westbound, yes, westbound, last seen in the alley, 33 to 32, in the 300 block.
Our ability to coordinate that over the radio system is incredibly important to us. I first of all have the ability to tell other officers where I'm at, that I have a certain location accounted for.
Sergeant Beam,
They
it's
know
about
that I'm
7.5
here.
minutes. Some of these videos are as short as 1 minute. The 5 employees that appear in these videos, basically unscripted. Jamie essentially put a camera in their presence and let them talk about what these needs are. And I think it's a very powerful testament to how we use the radio system and why that 4-minute response time, travel time from fire stations is so important. So I'm encouraging citizens to look at these. There's also a great description of the projects that's brief and easy to understand, and a nice section on frequently asked questions. I want to thank all the committee members again for being here, and my police officers and firefighters and communications coordinator for attending. We'd be happy to address any questions that you might have.
I was tweeting about the information and someone asked a question and I'll just pass it along to you. The city has a tendency to find money places for things every now and again. Is there not anywhere to find some extra funds?
These projects combined are going to cost about $34.5 million. And although we occasionally find things that can fund certain projects, nothing on this scale is available out there. I want to thank you very much for your attendance, and again, thanks to everyone.
Did they catch the guy on foot?
They did catch him, as a matter of fact. If you watch it to the end.
Watch the video.
Thanks for your good job.
Thanks. Thank you, Doug.